Everyone, David Aragona and Craig Milkowski are taking a look at one of a couple of turf stakes on Saturday at Aqueduct. And looking at the forecast, it does feel like we're actually going to get these races run over the turf course. I know that's been a big problem in the New York area recently. Race 6 is the Grade 3 Pebbles for the 3-year-old fillies. This one going a mile on the inner turf course. Let's throw up the field for this race, Craig. And we've got a three-headed monster from the Chad Brown barn. That's no big surprise in a New York turf stakes race. And he sends out a couple of recent maiden winners, Startup Mentality, but especially the number 8, Rhiannon, who was particularly impressive last time. And I understand why he's moving her up from a maiden race into a stakes event.
She was very impressive. I'm very happy to see, even with 3 horses from Chad Brown, that we get a good full 9-horse field. Hopefully they all make it to the gate. So it looks like a very interesting race.
It definitely does. We've got the classy Sacred Wish in there as well. She's proficient on both the dirt and the turf and is one who also figures to take some money in this spot. Let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this race to see how this field might line up on the front end. And it does feel like there's plenty of tactical speed in this race, Craig. I'll be interested to see which jockey is actually intent on getting to the front. I don't know if it's going to be the number 2 Plentitude. She's been more of a stalking type in her sprint races, but she is stretching out. Silver Skillet is one of the more versatile members of this field. She can go to the front. She can come from off the pace. And then we've got some wild cards coming in from other circuits, like the number 4 Precious Avery, who I think wants to be on the lead, but she's shown a little further back on the pace projector.
This is a race I think the jockeys are going to have a big say in early. It's not one I'd want to make a wager on the pace projector being correct, because I think it could go a lot of different directions. I won't be surprised if Plentitude's in the front, giving her sprint background and her first try going longer, but it's definitely an iffy race for me pace-wise.
I do understand that fast-paced flag, because even a horse like the number 3 on the short list has done her best running on the front end. She's shown towards the back of the pack, just coming out of some slower-paced races. So it feels like there's going to be plenty of intention to get forward. We'll see which horses are fast enough. Let's go through this field in post-position order, beginning with the number 1 Implicated. And she's kind of the outsider among the Chad Brown trio, Craig. She showed promise as a 2-year-old. She was actually a stakes winner at Aqueduct when she took down the Chelsea Flower over her stablemate Tax Implications. Her return from the layoff, it was just okay. She got a pretty good trip stalking the pace and just got tired at the end of that race. Maybe she needed the race off the long break, though Chad Brown typically is great off layoffs, so we'll see how much she can improve.
Yeah, that does seem like a negative to me, is that Chad Brown usually does very well off of layoffs. She has been pretty versatile in her start. You can see when she broke her maiden, she came from well behind. Been much closer the last 2. Maybe in her comeback, it was just being fresh, had her a little more eager to go early, but she seems a bit an outsider with the speed figures just being a cut below the rest.
The number 2 is Plentitude, who has shown plenty of versatility in terms of surface, won her debut on the dirt and then transitioned to the turf second time out with a nice race, winning that 6-furlong event. They tried a stakes race after that, the Blue Sparkler, and it just felt like she was run off her feet that day. She was also 3 to 4 wide around the far turn, just never in a great position, and it felt like 5.5 might have been a little too short for her. I like the stretch out, Craig, but she's a horse that's coming off a bit of a layoff, like a lot of horses in New York, just hasn't really been able to get into a turf race. But she's trying the mile for the first time off of this 4-month break.
Yeah, it's a tough ask against this field. If this was an allowance race, I might prefer it a little more. I agree with you. She had a tough trip, losing lots of ground in that short race at Monmouth last time. So she does have a bit of an excuse, but the stretch out is a question. She does have some breeding for it, though.
Yeah, as you say, she's definitely bred to stretch out. Her damn yellow agate was a winner of the Grade 1 Fezette, and this horse is a half-sister to Dirt Router Gasoline, as well as Pilgrim winner at Turf Route, stakes winner Agate Road, who we just recently saw on the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. So Plentitude certainly bred to go longer. The number 3 is on the short list, and she's one of those horses that probably wants to be forward in this race, Craig. I just don't know if she possesses the raw speed to get forward, because you do see some blue color-coded pace figures splashed across her PPs, and she's taking a big step up in class coming out of a claiming race. I will say she was beaten by a good horse in her only turf loss too back. That Nisi Marie has been an overachiever, running well in some New York Stakes races.
She is good. It's quite a step up in class, though. I mean, and she is good in Nisi Marie. She's done very little wrong on turf, but this is a huge step up. And to me, her speed figures just don't indicate she's ready for this kind of field.
The number four, Precious Avery, is sort of in a similar boat, stepping out of some tougher or softer races out of town. Here we'll take a look at her recent victory over older Maryland bred rivals in the Maryland Million Ladies. And she got to the front end this day, was able to back down the pace a little bit, and just couldn't really let anybody catch her as she drifts out coming onto the wire. She is a horse who arguably should have been spending her entire career on the turf, because she's 3 for 3 on this surface and is just 2 for 10 racing on other surfaces, or dirt to be specific. So now I think they've realized she's a turf horse. They're focusing on turf, but this is still an ambitious spot.
It is an ambitious spot. The one thing I would say about her is even though she's had easy leads, she really finishes off her races, particularly in those last two. So we've seen on the NYRA circuit where horses are able to go very slow at times. And that would be her main hope, I would think, is to get an easy lead in slow fractions. Because then when that happens, she's tough to catch.
Number five is the New York bred Silver Skillet, and she has really come to hand over the summer since getting on the turf. She's never finished out of the exacta on this surface, did run well to beat New York bred's three back, couldn't fend off Sacred Wish when that one ran by her, going the same distance over the Aqueduct course in the Winter Memories two back. Dirt last time, going back to it, I don't really care so much. She had the lead and got run down at the end, but she's much more of a turf horse these days. So I appreciate her getting back on this surface. I just feel like there are others in here that might have a bit more upside.
It is. She does have some versatility, which would make her maybe attractive to some. She's been able to run well from up close. She's come from well off the pace in the past. And her speed figure two back in her last turf race makes her a contender.
And we'll take a look at Silver Skillet and Sacred Wish when they competed most recently on grass in the Winter Memories back in the middle of September. We're highlighting Sacred Wish. The gray horse in between, the Silver Skillet, is the one that she's running by in the stretch here. Craig, I thought they both got great trips in this race, particularly Sacred Wish, who was off of an honest pace, riding the rail the entire way until the top of the stretch when Johnny Velasquez tipped her out and was able to run down the speed horses. Last time out in the Valley View, things didn't go quite as well. She got squeezed back in the early going and just found herself a lot farther back than she really wants to be. But at least we know that she has that versatility where she can stalk or come from off the pace. And I think that's going to serve her well in a race where the pace could heat up.
I agree. She got a great trip two back, but there's not a lot of reason to think she wouldn't get it again. And even with the tougher trip last time, she improved her speed figure a couple points. So she's moving in the right direction.
Up next, we've got a couple of intriguing recent maiden winners from the Chad Brown barn. The number seven is Startup Mentality. Let's take a look at her debut victory at Monmouth going back to the end of July. I believe this was the first race on Haskell Day, and she was really impressive. Reserved off the pace early, but started a wide run around the far turn and just mows this field down to the stretch. I'm not sure what she was beating this day, Craig, but she certainly was visually impressive doing so. There are high hopes for her. She was purchased for, I believe, $428,000 overseas as a daughter of Kingman. Chad Brown has definitely done well with these overseas purchases. She feels like one that could take a big step forward in her second start, but like a lot of horses, she hasn't been able to get into a turf race recently, so she's coming off a layoff.
Yeah, those layoff lines can be a little deceiving. I'm glad you mentioned that because if there's no races to run in, then you kind of have to have a layoff. Her first race was impressive. She did get a great trip that day. You see the P notation on her 104 Timeform US speed figure. We actually knocked that one down. The pace was so fast, it kind of led to an I would say exaggerated final time, a little faster than it should have been, but good effort from her. She's still kind of an unknown for me based on that easy trip, but she obviously has talent.
The number eight is Rhiannon, who I did peg as the morning line favorite in this race. We'll take a look at her turf debut last time, and this was a devastating effort. She was a horse who took a lot of money on debut on dirt, didn't really handle the muddy surface that day, but she clearly appreciated getting on the grass here, always traveling like the winner of this race in a stalking position. And once Kendrick Carmouche pressed the gas at the top of the stretch, she opens up on this field very impressively. It's not every day that you see a horse win a maiden race on the turf in New York by 7 lengths, Greg. She earned a 112 Timeform US speed figure, and it seems like a legitimate number.
It does. When you look through the chart on the time form USPPs and look at the run backs, they've been pretty strong. I mean, I don't think that number is any fluke at all. She had good tactical speed, really finished the race strong. So I agree with your morning line. She is the horse to beat.
And we'll see how much money she takes. Interestingly, Kendra Carmouche, who does not often ride for the Chad Brown barn, does retain the mount on her with Irad Ortiz on startup mentality instead. I think closing out the field is the number 9, Stephanie's Charm. She's a horse who's had a lot of chances. They tried out a different running style last time in the Jockey Club Oaks when she sort of ran off on the front end. I think Junior Alvarado and the connections wanted to be aggressive that day, and they just couldn't reel her in when she started racing freely in front, and she paid the price. She'll probably go back to closing tactics this time, Craig, but even if with the right kind of trip, I don't think she's good enough to be competitive with this field.
No, she's never run speed figures that would indicate she would be a competitor here. Hard to say what she'll do on the pace. I would imagine with the failed tactics last time that they'll go back to coming from off the pace. But for her, this race seems a bit of a stretch.
Well, Craig, let's throw up our picks for this race. And I think we're on similar pages. We both were pretty impressed by the number 8, Rhiannon, when she was that maiden winner last time out in her second career start. Cutting back to the mile here, she's a stalker in a race with a lot of other speed, but she feels like she might have the versatility to get the right trip. And I wonder if she's just better than these horses.
That's what I wonder as well. So her debut was so impressive visually and the number matched. And, normally I want to try to take a shot against horses like this, particularly moving from a maiden to a stake, but she just looked too good. And I think she's just a little bit better than some of the others in here.
Yeah, the price horse that I wanted to get in there was the number 2, Plentitude, who I do think has some attributes to appreciate the stretch out in distance, but she might be facing a pretty tough foe with the number 8, Rhiannon, who we both have on top in the Grade 3 Pebbles Stakes on Saturday at Aqueduct. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.